Hey guys, this is Lawrence Phillip aka DJ Random, and today we're still gonna be sticking around with the 80s. This time we're gonna be working on a seminal sound, a classic one from Bladerunner soundtrack by Vangelis. And this is the lead synth that you can hear in the title song. If you're wondering what sound I'm talking about, it's this one. So we're gonna be working on this brass sound, but as always, with my tutorial, we're not gonna be able to recreate the same exact sound as the original because from my reading, I think Vangelis were using the Yamaha CS80. We're gonna try to recreate that using a modern digital synth. So it's gonna sound pretty close, but not exactly the same. Okay, so let's just get started. As always, we're just gonna go with init preset. And then the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go with the first oscillator. This sound's only gonna be using one oscillator, and we're gonna start it with a saw wave, and we're gonna make the unison into 3 voice. And we wanna detune this really narrow. And then the next thing that we wanna do is we wanna go to the voicing tab right here, and we wanna turn up this polyphony count. Right now it sets at 8 on default, and we're gonna try to go with 16. And then let's hear what we have right now. So basically what you're hearing is a standard detune saw wave. And then now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the envelope, the amp envelope, and we're going to set this to attack to about 5 millisecond, something along that line. And then we want to go with the release. We want to make this about maybe around there. And then we leave everything else as it is. And then we want to assign this to the filter. And so we're going to go to filter. And we're gonna go with Moog Low 24, and then we wanna put this on the cutoff. And then right now this is what we should have. And then the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go to the matrix tab right here. And then what we wanna do is we wanna use this auxiliary source. So basically the auxiliary source, what it does is we can separate, kind of have like a separate control over this, whether we turn it on and turn it off. So let's just assign this to macro 1. Let's see what we have right now. So you guys probably gonna have a question like, why do we have to go through the matrix? Why don't we just assign that macro to the cutoff? Well, I could show you what will happen if we do that instead, okay? So let's say we're leaving it as it is. So what I want to do is I want to start it like right here, like around 12 o'clock for the cutoff. And then this is what we'll have when we put it on the cutoff. Well, it's already like very rich and harmonic. So let's say we assign this right here. And we have this. See, nothing really changed when we do that. It will only be affected if we start doing it like this. See, as you can tell, we're not really making that much of a dent when we're doing it like that. So while we're doing this, we have a little bit more control where we can actually shape the character of the sound. So let's put this back again into macro 1. Okay, now that we have this, What we want to do next is we want to change like the attack of this first envelope. So instead of changing our attack right here, which we can do right here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to assign this to the macro right here. So that way we can automate this a lot easier than going through the attack right here. But it's actually either way, that's up to you guys. You guys can just move it directly on the attack, but I prefer to do it on the macro because it's a lot neater. And then once again, trying to emulate analog synth, and just like all the previous 80s sound that we're trying to remake, one of the main characteristics of analog synth is how the pitch don't always locked in 100%, unlike its digital counterpart. Because when it comes to analog synth, you see your audio is being generated by voltage, electrical current, that's being generated by your oscillator. So those electrical current, that voltage tend to fluctuate, which causing that really subtle pitch drift. So we have to emulate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this using the LFO. But if you've been watching my video, usually what I do is I just use something like this and then put it on a fine tune. But now let's try something a little bit different, where we're going to have like a pretty fast modulation. And what we're going to do is let's create this shape. And then we're going to leave it pretty fast. I'm just going to sync this to the BPM using like a quarter rate. We'll assign this instead to the course right here. And then we want to reduce this to 1. And if we listen to it right now, it should sound really weird right now. And that's not what we want, you know, we want something that's like pretty steady. What we'll do next is we're going to go to the matrix step again, and we're going to once again use a auxiliary source assigned to a macro, and we're going to use auxiliary source where we're going to assign a macro right here. So we're going to use macro 3. That's the one that we haven't used. And then we're going to reduce this output of the macro. Now let's listen to it. So now basically by doing this, we actually create kind of like a vibrato effect. So we can... So if we go to the extreme, we can hear how like the pitch fluctuate, but by reducing this, then it's not so obvious, you know, it's not so strong. So notice how like if I put this all the way up and then it's very obvious, while if I leave it at like 60 or 50, they become kind of like more subtle. So we have that. And then now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the FX. So we're going to add a little bit of distortion. Let's use tube, and then we're going to send this macro to the drive. So that way we can have like a control over it. So by doing that, we're actually adding a bit more grit. And then after that, let's add the compressor. And then the next thing is we're going to add a reverb right here. We're going to go with the plate reverb, reduce the size a little bit, give it a low cut. And then let's turn the width all the way to the right. And let's make the mix at about 50, 51 right there. And then let's listen to it. Let's listen to it with the bass. So there you have it, guys. So let's recap, guys, how we achieved this sound. First, what we did was we started with the standard saw wave, and we're only using one oscillator. On the unison, we use 3, and then we detune this really narrow. And then the next thing that we did was we go to the voicing. On the polyphony, we add up to 16 voice. And then the next thing is we went to the amp envelope, where we create this envelope where the attack is about 4.5 to 5 millisecond, with the release at about 40 millisecond. And then we assign this envelope 1 to the filter, and in the filter we're using the Mooglow 24. And then we assign this to the filter cutoff, but we set the cutoff at about 380 hertz. And then we just kind of like assign the envelope all the way up. And then this is when things get interesting, because and then we go to the matrix, where we assign a macro one to control the cutoff, you know, kind of like giving it an on and off by assigning it here. And another thing is I assign this attack to a macro too, so we can control the way the attack goes. We could do that without assigning it to a macro, where we can adjust this right here, but I just prefer to do it in here because it's neater. And then after that, what we did was we're creating that pitch drift, which is a character of an analog synth, by using an LFO with the rate, which is quite fast this time, at 1/4. So we assign this LFO to the coarse pitch, and then we move this to 1. So it's really, really narrow, the pitch drift. And then we go to the matrix, and we use a macro 3 in the aux source. And this is actually, once again, to turn it on and turn it off, you know, so it's not so obvious. So it's subtle. And then we turn on the output. It's kind of like a wet and dry kind of thing when it's an FX. Well, it's the same thing. So I'll leave it at about 50% right here. So the pitch drift is kind of really, really subtle. And then after that, I go to the FX section, where I add a distortion. And this time I assign the distortion to a macro. And then I put a compressor and put a reverb. But this time I'm using a plate reverb with the pre-white setting and the dry wet at about 50%. And then once we did that, this is what we have. So that's it, guys. Bladerunner lead synth or brass by Vangelis. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up. And if you want more tutorial and production tips, please subscribe to my channel, because I'm updating this channel regularly now. Also, you can download the patch that we just made for free. The link for the download is on the description down below. And if you guys got any questions, just fire it up in the comment down below. And thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you on the next one.